you know, I feel uncomfortable about it because I'm thinking about the person that they're making this joke about. And so I realized in that moment, okay, are we going to make this playable or unplayable? Do I say, no, 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 that's not what you told me before? Or am I going to be like, okay, let's play it? So we played it. And the class went a totally different direction. So I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you were struggling with this. How long have you been living with this problem? And everybody's like, what? And the guy who's playing the part, because it's a guy who's playing a female here, and he's sort of like, year? Oh my gosh. Are you struggling with this by yourself, or are there other people who are trying to provide support right now? And he's like, what is going on? And, but we kept on going, and they constructed a whole fiction around this person. Other people in the class contributed information that felt resonant to them. And then we ended up with this beautiful improv scene. I asked them, we did like this thing, I'm talking too long, but like we did this thing where we had 3 groups of kids sort of decide whether they agreed, disagreed, or were unsure about this person having any kind of future at all. And then I turned to the people who said, no, I don't think so. And I said, is there any circumstance that you could see this person's life turning around? They named it, we improvised it. So, so that was really cool. And so I feel like I've gotten way off topic here, but I'm interested in this idea of the playable, the unplayable, why, and how people react. So, yeah.
That actually leads very nicely to my next question,
You're
which is, and I'm just thinking about like this playable versus unplayable. I'm thinking about my own experience where I had a student showcase, and I was like, and I invited all of my friends and family, and like they're all like nonprofit, social justice type people, and they came, and I jumped out for a scene, and then this guy who I was partnered with proceeded to play this really, really racist portrayal of a Native American person. And I just felt, I just like froze, and I didn't know what to do, and I wanted to say no. Like I honestly just wanted to walk off stage. So instead I just pretended I couldn't understand anything they were saying. Because I just didn't know. And so I'm curious, like I feel like that's kind of a common experience though. Like for me, I'm like, I know I'm not being a good, like you're torn between being an improviser but also playing along with this thing that you find upsetting. Like I felt like I had like fallen into a trap kind of. And so I'm just curious if any of you have had experiences like that, and also like how do you address that in an art form where you're implicitly told to say yes all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I've encountered it. My thinking on it is, you have the right to make the choice you want to make, and I have the right to react to that choice how I want to. You know what I mean? And I don't know what that means, but that's my philosophy going in, and I'm gonna base my character off of that, and I'm gonna go. You know what I mean? I also, in terms of like how I would talk about it after, maybe it's because of the writing background at the workshop. Like we go into offensive places, excuse me, but it's all from a satirical point of view. You have to back it up. There has to be a reason why these choices were made. And in a note session, or when we've had those note sessions, that's kind of what we try to do. Like we just try to understand, like, well, where was this coming from? And if after a few series of questions it was because I thought that this was just going to be shock funny, then at least that was put out on the table, and everybody in the group gets to be like, well, here's how I think that this might have ended up being a stronger, not necessarily choice, but here, if you come at it from this direction, we might come at it from this direction. And I found that was a good way to talk about it is, what were you trying to do with that choice? You know what I mean? What was the character's motivation? What was the point of view? And that's a good way to kind of get that person to answer for that character choice if it was just so, you know what I mean? And then if you could just, I did it because I thought it'd be shocking or maybe just a little, then well, that kind of speaks for itself, you know what I mean? It's kind of the group dynamic, you know. In class situations, I try to do it in a kinder way because a lot of the people in our school are actors, but a lot of them aren't. Like they're just, and it's kind of what James is talking about, is their first exposure to being on stage, being really, really vulnerable, and you know, sometimes you go to that sort of power play, and so we just try to talk about status a lot, and well, Why did we make this choice? What was going on here? You know what I mean? Like, were you trying to build this your scene partner's point of view a little bit? Were we trying to construct a story, or were you really, really nervous? So your power play came across in this way. You know what I mean? Because when you're first on stage, that's what happens a lot. Like, this is fucking scary. What's a choice I can make that so I'm a little bit more in control of it? I think I saw that set.
I know you did.
And I'm almost, I don't know, but that's what went through my head when I saw that scene.
Yeah.
I was like, I think this person wanted to be in control for a second and needed to have the power. And I don't know if I'm phrasing that correctly,
Yeah.
but we talk about status a lot when that comes up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
I want to continue to talk about what we said we would talk about, which is unteaching sexual violence. But your example is a really good example of, and the way that Mike explained it. I think for some reason, because there's this misconception of Native Americans as being this historical group that's all gone now, that it's really easy to do like super racist Native American characters on the improv stage, because it's like, wow, they're not around anymore, you know, like, oh, nightmare. So so that's a group that it's like, well, we're pretty safe, right? I mean, there's none of those people in the audience. So like that's an improv thing that happens a lot. I think it feels to some people like a relatively safe, like I'll get away with it way to other something and then become less vulnerable themselves, because and this, I swear this is leading somewhere. The improv group that I am in, called Splendid Things, we repeat ourselves a lot because we've been doing improv for a while together. So sometimes it seems like we've done the scene before. And one of the scenes that comes up for us a lot is Native American characters who are like, you fucking white people, which is silly because we're a bunch of white people in our group. But a lot of times we will be doing a scene in the Old West, and a Native American character will come, and all of the white pioneers will be incredibly ignorant. And we'll be like, well, could you use your magic? And so, and then the Native American will be like, you guys are idiots. Oh my God. And so what we're trying to do on some level is have a discussion in the improv scene about the problem.
Right.
And so I think it's a little trickier to do that when it comes to sexual violence in a scene, because racism feels different. I'm not comparing or weighing the two or making one more important than the other, but racism, just like sexism feels different than misogyny on stage, racism feels different than like racial hatred. And so, and sexual violence, especially like misogynist, creepy tones on stage, feels different for an improviser, especially if you're playing a character and something like sexually violent is being leveled against your character. And so I've seen people when they've gotten, well, I don't think I've seen it. No, I have seen it. It's a little more difficult sometimes to call that out on stage in character. Like my tip for people is when you find yourself getting really, really wronged and transgressed against on stage, and your boundaries are getting crossed, to try to summon everything you have in your real life, all the knowledge that you have, all of your firmly set boundaries, and give those to your character quickly and secretly while the audience can't see it, and then your character suddenly becomes the person who's like, listen, you're being a creep right now, and these are my boundaries. And you know, if your character is then a little inconsistent, you know, if it's like a 6-year-old Martian girl who probably doesn't have an academic background in gender studies, like, it's improv, you're gonna ride a banana off into the sunset anyway, so like, I think it's gonna be okay. And the audience will probably thank you, and they'll overlook the character inconsistency because you protected them and gave them a discussion on stage instead of a spectacle of someone being transgressed against. But I've seen people be like there was a scene that I saw where a female improviser was in this scene set at an airport, and it was like a spy espionage, like whatever, like action thing going down. And I think she had this idea that she was gonna be like undercover as a nun and like come in and be like, I'm gonna break this up. But the other people in the scene had a different idea of how it was gonna go, and one of them was playing a TSA agent. And so because the agendas were conflicting underneath the action, like the improv craft subtext was like, you're screwing up my scene, get out of my scene. The TSA character was like, ma'am, you need to get out of here right now. And then the nun character was like, I think I'll stick around. And the TSA agent was like, get out of here or I'll touch your vagina. And I was like, oh. And she was like, I'm gonna stay right here. And I don't remember what happened then. I think I was just like, I gotta get out of this theater. But I think some sort of fight scene ensued, and then she was led away, and I was
hoping
like,
you were gonna say the Martian 6-year-old.
whoa. Honestly, if you are on the sideline and that happens, I am unsure what to do except to like sweep and cut to like, so ma'am, you're saying, and just play an authority figure that's like, what the fuck just happened to you? I mean, that's how I've seen people deal with it. I've been in sets where it's like, I don't know. I feel like I don't deal with those trap holes that often anymore because people kind of know, like, I'm not gonna put up with it.
Yeah.
So, but I think in student showcases and in like jams and stuff like that where there isn't that trust, or people don't know, like, okay, that person will smack me down hard if I, like, people aren't aware of each other's boundaries. It'll happen more often, and you can help someone by sweeping and being like, you okay? What happened to you? Like, I'm a character who's gonna save you from that, but you can also just be like, hold up and use your own critical knowledge to like take a person down. I saw Butch Roy do it with facts about the autism spectrum disorder in a scene that was really awesome. Were you there for that? Was a show X, I think. Like, I can't remember what it was, but it was a scene where someone called someone else autistic, and Butch was like, actually, I think he was like a thug in a grocery store parking lot or something, and he was like, actually, one of the facts about that is, and he held forth, and everyone was like, oh, because it was a slip. It was people, pursuing a comedic note that fell short because of like verbal irresponsibility, and everyone on stage was totally in for like, let's fix it. So all these like thugs and this lady who had a son in the parking lot, we were all like, I think we've all learned something today. Let's not be dicks. All right, see you later. So that's best case scenario.
So I guess I feel like the response that's sort of like where you do a cut to and then there's the authority figure being like, what was said to you? I feel like that is a totally legit move. And here's why. Is because to me, that's playing the moment. That's playing what actually happened. If a TSA agent said to a nun, I'm gonna touch your vagina, the nun would report his ass. Like, that's gonna happen.
Even if she was a spy in an action movie. I believe, because the cop who saw that was like, I'm gonna step in, and then
or think about what other kinds of retribution a spy could rain down on that TSA agent. I don't know.
Yeah.
When things like that happen, I like to expand. I like to build out. I'm like, okay, let's go wide then. Let's see every consequence of this thing that just happened, so that way we can honor it as an offer that was made to the scene. So one way of thinking about it is like, let's school this person or let's really fix this. Another way of thinking of it is like, let's support the offer that was made. Even if we hate that it was made and we're not sure why the improviser made it, like it's part of our set, let's build it in. Now what a great opportunity to sort of like see how this would play out.
And that's agreement. I mean, that's improv agreement, which is different, I think, than literally just saying, and being a character who is agreeable versus just embracing.
But I also think
reality.
it's agreement in that scene to do the hotspot interview a little bit. You know what I mean? And like honestly react how that character would react and be like, why was that the very first thing that came out of your mouth? You know what I mean? Like, but also because I know if the three of us were in a scene, because we've done a lot of improv together, and we trust each other with it, that I'm trying to build off of this. You made this offer. I have the right to respond how I want. You know what I mean? It's a different kind of thing with students, but like I feel like what you start to notice with more experienced improvisers is that they're willing to do that cut to, or they're willing to sort of fire off that question, and that other improviser doesn't take that as any type of offense. They're like,
right.
I'm playing a character.
Or
I said
stop
this.
the improv.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like
you're not hitting a pause button.
Yeah. Like I said this. I chose to change the dynamic in whatever way it's just been changed with the audience and on stage and everything. You have the right to ask that question, and now as a character, I have the right to try to respond and build off of this and create that. But I think that's because the more experienced you are, the less you take that as a personal affront or oh crap, they're judging what I said. You know
and
what
the
I
less
mean?
likely you are to make to do that move where you're like, I feel vulnerable. There's someone more vulnerable.
Yeah,
crap
exactly.
on you. You know.
Like, well, and I'm thinking of a like, for example, there was another scene that I was in where someone came over, and it was totally unrelated to the scene, and it was somebody who I hadn't played with very much, and he like took my clothes off in the scene.
Your space work clothes?
My space work
I'm
clothes.
seriously asking. Yeah.
Yeah, and it made me feel really violated. I felt like it was unnecessary, and then I had a, like, I don't know, like personally I felt really violated, and I didn't know like how to address it. And like I said, this is a form where you're always saying yes, and I think it's hard to judge like I'm like, am I just being oversensitive? Like I'm supposed to say yes to this scene, and I'm just curious, how do you address that and make those boundaries
I think,
clear?
in my opinion, you're the improviser in that scene. If you're having that reaction to it, play your reaction. I'm not giving you that note. I'm saying I think that that's a legitimate move. And so, like, I don't see any reason why, say yes to that. You know what I mean? And obviously we all know, because we've all improvised, that there's a difference between accepting somebody taking your clothes off and being a say yes kind of improviser. You know what I mean? You don't have to be like yes to sex because you proposed it. Like, your character doesn't want to have sex, so put your fucking clothes back on. I'm sorry. So that's, I don't know.
Or it's improv and you have clothes underneath.
Yeah.
Or worst case scenario, like I just want to put this out here and call that this is an option too. You can be like, I gotta go and leave this scene and stay on the sidelines for the rest of the set and never perform with those assholes again. Honestly, like I know someone who's I know people who've had to do that, like in our town, which is like, what, Minneapolis? We're all so the hipster capital of the world. In an improvised performance of our town, someone just climbed to the top of the ladder and stayed there.
I'm such a fucking idiot because that's exactly what I thought. I was like,
Yeah.
when did
When
that
did that happen? Why was I not asked to do it? I love
So loud.
we had to do it secretly because we knew you would steamroll it. But I know somebody who like I know someone who got like physically like touched too much, like grabbed and grappled and knocked over and stuff, and they tried a lot of like, here's an improv solution, and that didn't work. They weren't being listened to, and then they tried like dropping character and being like, you need to get the fuck off of me. And then it kind of happened a little bit, but then there was still some like pushing and shoving and grabbing. And so she left the stage and was like, I'm not gonna be in this set anymore. And then later was like, guess what? That doesn't fly, and I am not comfortable performing in this group if that's how we're gonna do it. And so I think there is that point where I think people need to know that that's okay, that that's legit, that you can still be a legitimate improviser and take things to the green room sometimes, and that's like a process that's there for you to just be like, or take it to your coach or your teacher and be like, I need you to facilitate this like conversation within our group because that was a big boundary cross and it wasn't good. And then make sure that you're heard in that conversation, that you're not being oversensitive. And like, I think the only way to help people feel like worry about that less is for everyone to know that that's a move as an improviser that you can do, that you can take something to the green room and be like, this content is not something that I don't want to be in a group that deals with this content in this way. What can we take it down to, like notes about our improv craft?
Right.
Like, what are we doing as improvisers that's leading to that? And maybe it is something like what Mike outlined, like that it's someone's feeling vulnerable or someone was going for shock because they didn't know what else to do. Or maybe it's just that someone is has some creepy, deep-seated anger about something, and they need to go cool off and take a break before they are welcome back on the improv stage. So you gotta it's sometimes there's something like that important that needs to be dealt with, and it's not fair for someone who's being responsible with their craft to have to take on the worry of am I being reasonable? Am I being an agreeable enough improviser? When perhaps the responsibility lies with another performer who's just got a lot of pent-up anti-lady rage or something that they need to go spend some money to take care of and then come back, divert the improv class budget towards a therapist. And then you can redistribute that money later when you're ready to come back and treat everyone else. Seriously.
The one note, the one take home from this panel.